I was standing in my parents' kitchen on New Year's Eve, rinsing dishes nobody asked me to wash. That was always my role somehow. Not guest, not daughter worth showing off, not the one people bragged about. Just useful background noise. The kind of person who keeps things moving while everyone else gets to be the main character. The house smelled like cinnamon candles and roasted turkey. Music floated in from the living room. My cousins were laughing over some dumb childhood story, glasses clinking, heels tapping against hardwood floors. And right on schedule, my Aunt Vanessa started. She always did. Some people collect stamps. Aunt Vanessa collected weak spots. She sat curled on the beige couch like she owned oxygen itself, swirling red wine in a crystal glass Dad bought her 3 Christmases ago. "You know what I've been wondering?" she announced, loud enough for half the room to hear. That sentence alone should have come with a warning label. Mom froze near the snack table. Dad suddenly found the football game on TV deeply fascinating. My younger brother Tyler visibly winced. Aunt Vanessa smiled. That shark smile. "What exactly does Olivia do all day?" There it was. Boom. Dropped like a grenade in the middle of holiday small talk. A few heads turned. Not everyone, just enough. Enough to make it sting. I kept scrubbing a plate. Ceramic. White. Tiny gold trim. Focus on the plate, I told myself. Not the room, not the heat crawling up your neck. Not this again. Mom cleared her throat. She works remotely. Vanessa let out a laugh so fake it practically had sponsorship deals. "Okay, Janet, but doing what?" "She works online." That is not an answer. A couple cousins exchanged looks. Tyler muttered, "Here we go." Vanessa leaned back like she was presiding over court. I mean, seriously, she's 31. 31. Like it was a criminal record. No husband, no kids, no office, no normal schedule. Every time I ask, it's all vague corporate mumbo-jumbo. She mimicked my voice. Consulting, strategy, product systems. A little flutter of fingers. What does that even mean? Small laughs. Not cruel, exactly. Just easy. Cheap entertainment. My family had been doing this my whole life. Chelsea types get celebrated. People like me get translated into punchlines. My cousin Brianna, same age as me, was getting married in April. Huge deal. Engagement photos everywhere. My grandmother had literally cried when Brianna showed her the ring. Tyler had just made junior partner at his law firm. Dad wouldn't shut up about it. Meanwhile, I was apparently some weird cryptid everyone tolerated because I shared DNA. Dad tried to soften things. "She works with businesses." Vanessa turned toward him dramatically. "Frank, if your own daughter's career sounds like a LinkedIn scam, maybe that says something." That got a bigger laugh. Even Uncle Mark chuckled into his bourbon. Cool. Love that for me. I dried my hands, set the plate down. Still said nothing. That irritated Vanessa more than if I'd argued. People like her don't just want a reaction. They want access. They want emotional fingerprints. Tyler stepped in. "Liv does fine." Vanessa pounced immediately. "Oh, then explain what she does." Tyler opened his mouth, paused, closed it. Because he couldn't. Because none of them knew. Not really. And honestly, that part was on purpose. Vanessa threw up her hands like she'd just won debate club. Exactly. Nobody knows. Then she looked right at me. "You know what this reminds me of?" I already hated what was coming. "My friend's son said he was in crypto consulting for 2 years. Pause. He was unemployed and living off DoorDash. A burst of laughter. Real time. Louder. My stomach tightened. and suddenly I was 14 again. Science fair, regional finals. I'd built a logistics algorithm prototype that sorted emergency route optimization. No one in my family understood what it did. Didn't matter. It won first place. I came home holding a giant blue ribbon and a check for $2,000. Dad glanced up from Tyler's baseball practice schedule and said, "That's nice, sweetheart." That same weekend, Tyler hit a home run. They threw him a barbecue. Guess which achievement got framed? Spoiler alert, not mine. That was the pattern. Always. At 17, I got accepted to Stanford early. Mom asked if it was far. Dad asked how much tuition would cost. Tyler got into UCLA a year later, and Grandma mailed him $500 and a handwritten letter about making the family proud. At 23, I got recruited into a boutique operations strategy firm. Top percentile salary, crazy growth track. When I explained it at Thanksgiving, Aunt Vanessa interrupted me halfway through and asked if I'd considered becoming a teacher so your life feels more grounded. Grounded because apparently ambition in women is suspicious unless it comes with Pinterest aesthetics. I learned eventually. Stop explaining, stop translating yourself into bite-sized family-approved pieces. Let them misunderstand. It's quieter that way. So I did. I built my life in silence. Not because I was ashamed, because it was peaceful. Or at least less exhausting. By 24, I'd left consulting, started something of my own. Tiny at first. Just me, laptop, coffee shop Wi-Fi, a mess of spreadsheets and sleep deprivation. I built workflow systems for mid-size companies drowning in operational chaos. At first, it was simple. Internal systems, scaling architecture, automation mapping, process optimization. Boring words, huge money. Turns out corporations will pay ridiculous amounts if you can save them time and stop their departments from operating like raccoons in a trench coat. First client? $18,000. I cried after sending the invoice. Not because it was a lot, because someone paid me for something my family said wasn't a real skill. By 26, I had 14 clients. By 27, I hired my first team. By 28, I incorporated Northline Systems. Me as founder and CEO. Remote first, operational intelligence consultancy. Sexy name, ugly hours. I worked like a machine. Not because I was trying to prove anything anymore. That phase burns out eventually. No, I worked because I loved it. Loved building. Loved fixing broken things. Systems made sense to me in ways humans often didn't. Humans were messy, contradictory, emotionally glitchy. A spreadsheet never pretended to love you while minimizing your existence. By 30, Northline had clients in 7 countries, Fortune 500 retainers, private contracts, expansion teams. A quiet monster of a company. No flashy branding, no podcast appearances, no founder selfies, just results. Revenue crossed $84 million, then $130 million, then kept climbing. I bought an apartment in Manhattan, paid cash. 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, view of the Hudson, minimalist furniture because I have taste and trust issues. Mom still thought I rented something cute. Fine by me. Then came the email, 3 months before New Year's. Subject line, Feature Inquiry, Forbes Next Titans Issue. I stared at it for a full minute. Thought it was spam. It wasn't. Forbes wanted a feature, not a mention, a full founder profile. Apparently, Northline had become impossible to ignore. My COO nearly tackled me when I told him, "You have to do it. I hate publicity. You hate unnecessary publicity." He had a point. The article process took weeks. Photo shoots, interviews, fact-checking, founder background, revenue disclosures, client references. One journalist asked me, "Did your family always support your ambition?" I laughed so hard she lowered her notebook. Not bitterly, just honestly. "No," I said. "Do they know how successful you are now?" I leaned back, thought about Aunt Vanessa asking if I secretly delivered groceries, thought about Mom buying me self-help books about finding direction, thought about Dad once offering to help with bills after I casually mentioned tax strategy. "No," I said. "Why not?" "Because there's a specific kind of loneliness that comes from being unseen by people who insist they know you. And once you feel it enough times, you stop auditioning." That quote made it into the piece. I approved final edits 2 weeks ago. Publication date? December 31st. New Year's Eve. Universe has a sick sense of humor. Back in the living room, Vanessa was still monologuing. "You know, what worries me," she said dramatically, Olivia bingo card nearly complete, "she's so secretive." She lowered her voice like discussing a cult. "People with real careers don't hide them." Doorbell rang. Saved by capitalism. Dad looked relieved. "I'll get it." But I was already closer, so I went. Opened the front door. Delivery guy. Large, rigid envelope. Signature required. My pulse kicked once. There it is. Right on time. "Need you to sign here." I signed, took the package, closed the door, turned around, and suddenly every person in the room was looking at me, because attention is magnetic when silence breaks. "What's that?" Vanessa asked, her tone casual. Too casual. I looked at the envelope, then at her, then smiled, small, almost lazy. "Oh," I said, "probably nothing," and tossed it onto the coffee table, right in front of her. The room got quiet in that weird, accidental way families do when something mildly interesting interrupts their favorite sport, judging each other. Aunt Vanessa looked down at the envelope like it personally offended her. "What is it?" she asked. I shrugged. "Magazine?" That answer clearly wasn't satisfying enough for her. She picked it up. Heavy stock envelope, clean white packaging, top corner stamped with a familiar logo. And the second her eyes landed on it, her entire face shifted. Not dramatically, just enough, like her brain hit a speed bump. "Forbes?" she said. That got attention. Fast. Dad turned from the TV. Tyler looked up from his phone. Mom blinked twice. "Forbes?" Uncle Mark repeated, suddenly interested. Vanessa frowned, sliding a finger under the seal. "Since when do you subscribe to Forbes?" "I don't." That made her pause. She opened it anyway. Of course she did. Curiosity is basically her cardio. She pulled out the magazine, glossy black cover, gold lettering, minimalist design, 3 faces featured across the front. One hedge fund founder, one biotech entrepreneur, and me. Bottom center, arms crossed, black blazer, neutral expression, city skyline blurred behind me. The headline stretched across the page in bold lettering. "The New Power Operators. How a quiet founder built one of America's fastest-growing private companies without anyone noticing." Silence. Like real silence. Not TV silence, not holiday chatter pause. Silence with weight. Vanessa stared at the cover, then looked at me, then back at the cover, like maybe one of us was counterfeit. "What the hell?" Tyler stood so fast his drink almost tipped over. "No shot." He grabbed the magazine from her hands, looked at the cover, started laughing. Not mean laughter, pure disbelief. "Yo!" He looked around the room. "Yo!" That was apparently all his vocabulary could manage. Mom walked over slowly, like approaching a wild animal. She touched the cover with careful fingers. Olivia? Dad took it next, read the headline once, then again slower, then flipped it open. Page 42, two-page spread, full profile, huge photo. Me in Northline's New York headquarters, conference wall behind me covered in systems architecture, laptop open, coffee in hand. The article title, The Woman Companies Call When Growth Starts Breaking Them. Underneath was my name, Olivia Carter, founder and CEO, Northline Systems. Estimated ownership, 71%. Private valuation, $940 million. The room collectively short-circuited. I wish I could say it felt triumphant, like movie justice, like fireworks in my bloodstream. Honestly, it felt weirdly calm, like watching weather you predicted weeks ago. Dad started reading aloud, his voice shaky. Olivia Carter spent the last 7 years quietly building one of the most profitable operational intelligence firms in the United States. He stopped, looked up. His face had gone pale. Mom whispered, 7 years? Tyler leaned over his shoulder. Holy, he caught Mom glaring. Holy crap. Close enough. Dad kept reading. Northline Systems currently serves enterprise clients across North America, Europe, and Asia, generating an estimated annual revenue exceeding $210 million. Uncle Mark straightened in his chair. $210 million? Revenue, I corrected, automatically. Old habit. He stared at me like I'd just spoken fluent dolphin. Vanessa snatched the magazine back, flipped pages aggressively. Her lips moved as she scanned. There were charts, interview excerpts, business breakdowns, founder story, a sidebar titled, Under the Radar Titans to Watch. My photo appeared again, smaller, still unmistakable. And then she found it, the quote, the one from my interview, highlighted in pull quote font across half a page. I stopped explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. Oh, beautiful. Like the universe hired a petty intern. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Mom read over her shoulder. Then froze. Because beneath the quote was the explanation. When asked whether her family understood her work, Carter laughed before answering, not even a little. Tyler actually wheezed. He covered his mouth. Damn. Tyler, Mom snapped. But weakly. Her software was clearly crashing. Dad sat down hard in the recliner, still holding pages open. Olivia, he said, slowly, as in, this is real? I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because that question summarized my entire relationship with them. Real. That was always the issue. Not my success, not my ambition, not my competence. Reality itself. Could they believe it existed if they didn't understand it? Yes, I said. It's real. Vanessa looked personally betrayed. But you work from home. Sometimes. You wear sweatpants. Sometimes. You said you were in operations. I am. She blinked, like operations had suddenly become witchcraft. That doesn't explain any of this. No, I said, it explains all of this. You just never listened long enough. That landed. Sharp, clean, not loud. Worse. Truth usually is. Mom sat down beside Dad. She looked emotional. Not crying yet, just close. Why do moms always look like they're about to apologize on behalf of civilization? Why didn't you tell us? She asked softly. And there it was, the question everyone asks after ignoring the previous 14 answers. I leaned against the kitchen counter, folded my arms. I told you. No, honey, I mean, no, I interrupted gently. I literally told you. Silence. I continued. I told you when I hired my first employee. Nothing. I told you when I opened my New York office. Blank faces. I told you when we signed our first European contract. No recognition. I told you when I flew to Berlin for client expansion. Mom frowned. I thought that was a work trip. It was. Dad looked confused. But I thought you were consulting. I was. And now? I own a company. But since when? Since 7 years ago. Tyler made a strangled sound somewhere between a cough and spiritual collapse. No freaking way. I looked at him. You never asked either. He held up both hands. Fair, that's on me. At least one honest soldier in the battlefield. Vanessa still wasn't done. Of course not. She narrowed her eyes. This says estimated ownership 71%. Yes. So what does that actually mean? Ah, there it is. The money translation feature. Because emotional comprehension was unavailable, but net worth? Crystal clear. It means most of the company is mine. She stared. And this valuation? Private market estimate. But roughly? I considered her, then decided accuracy was kinder than ambiguity. Northline is currently valued just under $1 billion. Someone dropped a fork in the dining room. Clink. Tiny soundtrack moment. Mom covered her mouth. Dad blinked rapidly. Uncle Mark muttered, Jesus. Tyler laughed again, not because it was funny, because some numbers are emotionally illegal. Vanessa looked physically uncomfortable, like her body rejected the information. That can't be right. Dad pointed at the article. It's Forbes, Vanessa, as if divine law had entered chat. Funny. They believed me now, not because my words changed, not because my life changed overnight, but because glossy paper gave my existence permission. That was the punchline. And honestly, that part hurt more than all the jokes. Mom looked at me with wet eyes. We had no idea. I know. Why didn't you make us understand? That question almost knocked the air out of me. Make us understand. Like comprehension was my side hustle. Like I was responsible for dragging my own worth into visibility. Something in me clicked. Not snapped, not shattered, just settled. Like a snow globe finally stilling. I smiled. Not angry, not sad, just done. I said, You only ask for explanations after evidence arrives. No one here ever wanted understanding. I glanced around the room. At best, you wanted categories. Nobody spoke, so I kept going, because after years of shrinking, turns out honesty takes up very little effort. You understand Tyler. I nodded toward him. Lawyer, makes sense. He winced. Not offended, just aware. You understand Brianna. I motioned toward my cousin. Engaged, teacher, Pinterest-friendly. A tiny laugh escaped someone. Nervous. Then I looked at Vanessa. You understand stories where people fit into familiar boxes. Her face hardened. That's unfair. No, I said. It's precise. That one hit harder. Dad closed the magazine, hands trembling slightly. I'm proud of you. And man, that sentence, any other year, that sentence might have wrecked me, might have healed some stupid inner child wound I never asked to carry. But timing matters, and late validation has an expiration date. So I nodded politely. Thanks. Not cold, not warm, just neutral, because gratitude and emotional debt are not the same currency. Mom wiped her eyes. You should have let us celebrate you. I almost smiled. You never needed permission. The room went still again, but this time differently. Not shocked, reflective, like everyone had accidentally walked into a mirror and hated the lighting. Tyler broke the tension. "So," he lifted the magazine, grinning, "you're rich, rich?" I laughed, finally. Real laugh. Human laugh. God, it felt good. "Comfortable," I said. He whistled. Translation, disgustingly loaded. "Tyler! Mom, come on. Look at this apartment photo." He flipped pages. "Oh my God, is that your kitchen?" "Yes. It's bigger than our house." Low bar. Even Dad laughed at that one. Tiny crack in the tension. But Vanessa was quiet now. Too quiet, which meant one thing. She was loading another bullet. And sure enough, she looked up from the article, eyes narrowed, voice softer now, more dangerous. "Well," she said, paused, then the smile. Small, strategic, calculated. "If all this is true," and that sentence, that was when the real story actually started. The second Aunt Vanessa said that, the room changed. Subtle, but immediate. Like everyone's internal calculator suddenly turned on. Family should start acting like family. Translation? Now that your success is officially verified, your value has been recalculated. Classic. Aunt Vanessa leaned back into the couch, suddenly much warmer than she'd been 20 minutes earlier. Her whole energy shifted. Gone was the smug little prosecutor routine. Now she was auditioning for Supportive Relative of the Year. Funny how fast people discover emotional intimacy once money enters the chat. "You know," she said, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her dress, "I always knew Olivia was smart." Tyler snorted so hard he almost inhaled his own drink. Nobody even tried hiding it. Vanessa ignored him. She kept going. "I mean, she was always different." There it was, the family-friendly version of "we never got you." Mom nodded too quickly. "Yes, very driven." Dad added, "Always independent." Amazing. A live rebrand. I watched them all with this strange out-of-body calm, like I was no longer inside the moment, just observing it, documentary style. Look at the mammals adapt to new information. Uncle Mark leaned forward. "So what's next for the company?" There it is. Questions. Now they had questions, not because curiosity bloomed organically, because now my life had been translated into a language they respected. Success, numbers, external validation. I answered anyway. Expansion. Into what? Enterprise infrastructure intelligence. Blank stares. Tyler grinned. "See? We're back." That got a laugh. Even me. Some things never change. Mom reached for my hand. Careful. Tentative. Like she wasn't sure she'd earned access. Maybe she hadn't. "Why didn't you ever show us any of this?" I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, I answered without sugarcoating. Because every time I shared something important, it got minimized. That landed harder than anything else I'd said all night. No room to debate it, no wiggle room, just truth sitting naked in the middle of the room. Dad frowned. "We never meant to make you feel that way." I know. And I did know. That was the complicated part. Neglect isn't always theatrical. Sometimes it's just consistent underestimation. Death by 1,000 tiny dismissals. Not evil, just cumulative, like emotional paper cuts. You barely notice them individually, then one day you realize you've been bleeding for years. I took a breath. Not dramatic, just steady. When Tyler got into law school, you threw him a party. Tyler lowered his eyes. When I landed my first major client, Mom asked if freelancing came with health insurance. Mom looked crushed. When I bought my apartment, Dad asked if my landlord was flexible. Tyler laughed into his hand again. Sorry, he muttered. Honestly, fair. When I flew to Singapore for a client acquisition meeting, Aunt Vanessa asked if I was finally taking a vacation because work clearly wasn't going anywhere. Vanessa flushed. I was joking. Exactly. That word hung there. Exactly. Because that was the point. Everything about me had become a punchline before anyone checked whether I was the joke. The silence stretched. No music now. TV muted. Even the baby monitor from upstairs seemed respectfully quiet. Dad rubbed his forehead. I think we missed a lot. That might have been the most honest sentence he'd ever said to me. Yes, I replied. You did. No anger, just acknowledgement. Mom's eyes filled again. I'm sorry. And weirdly, that one felt real. Not perfect, not enough to erase years, but real. That mattered. Some apologies arrive late, but still honest. I gave her a small nod. Thank you. Vanessa, however, was apparently allergic to humility. She straightened in her seat. Well, I still think if you were more open... Tyler literally groaned, out loud. Read the room, Vanessa. She shot him a glare. I'm just saying relationships go both ways. I turned toward her, calmly. No heat, no fight left, just clarity. You're right. She looked smug for half a second, then I finished. Relationships do go both ways. Smugness evaporated. If you only know how to love versions of people you understand immediately, then your love has conditions. Nobody breathed. Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it. Checkmate. No dramatic music required. Tyler whispered, damn, under his breath. Again. Vocabulary king. I pushed off the kitchen counter, grabbed my coat from the chair. Mom blinked. You're leaving?